if you give the defendant the benefit of the doubt that she did not know she was pregnant immediately upon giving birth, the natural thing you would think anybody would do is, help, help, I just had a baby, help, help, I need help. She did not tell anybody for 30 minutes. It was 30 minutes later that the cleaning lady found the baby, and obviously another 5-10 minutes till the police showed up.
So is Alexee Trevizo going to have her trial or not? I think a lot of people were wondering that because they haven't heard any updates about this case. There's a major decision right now that's being held up in interlocutory appeals where the Supreme Court has to make a decision of whether or not the body cam where Alexee Trevizo makes her admissions, although it could be argued that maybe it also helps her defense of saying that it was a stillborn baby. The major focus of the hearing is for the Supreme Court justices to determine whether or not Alexee Trevizo was in custody. Did she make these involuntary self-incriminating statements? And then also focusing on the physician-patient privilege. Was that violated? Additionally, Dr. Vaskez, the emergency room doctor that was attending to Alexee Trevizo, was she acting as an agent for law enforcement? These are the things that were not going through a lot of our heads, people that are watching, unless, maybe you're an attorney or law enforcement. But a lot of us were just really shocked at the actions of a 19-year-old. She shows up to the hospital, she's pregnant, she runs to the bathroom to secretly give birth, and then she discards the baby in the bathroom trash can, even though she's surrounded by hospital staff knocking on her door and she's in a hospital environment. And I remember seeing through the comments that a lot of people had compassion for the doctor, the staff that had to deal with the aftermath of finding a dead baby in the bathroom. However, now when we have the body cam footage, it's been, 2.5 years, and you get to pick everything apart about what the doctor did, what they didn't do, maybe they violated some things here and there. They are really under scrutiny here in this hearing. We're no longer in just a hospital room setting. It's now being layered on top of a courtroom setting where every little action everyone took is going to be looked at under a microscope. You got to fight everything you can in the courtroom to protect an individual's right. And even though you might not like the individual, rights are still our rights, right? At the end of the day, we all have rights as well, and you don't want your own rights to be violated. So I do, honestly, I do feel bad for the medical team that they're being looked at with this much scrutiny. But, we're at the stage right now where the Supreme Court needs to decide whether or not Alexee Trevizo's rights were they violated. And quite honestly, this is what made the case even more interesting, because when I initially watched the body cam footage, it wasn't until Alexee Trevizo's attorney raised up HIPAA issues. I wasn't sure if whether or not law enforcement was able to get information from the hospital staff, talking about how she was bleeding and the placenta and how she's being transferred and all that stuff. I wasn't sure if that was allowed to be said to law enforcement or not. I just thought maybe it was because law enforcement came in to respond to a possible homicide. Now, this hearing was more like a discussion where they were jumping around to different types of topics and then kind of like bringing it all back together and then hopping left and right. I think the best way to really look at this is to look at the stages of which everything happened. So, for example, we have stage 1. Pre-confrontation statement made by the charge nurse. That's where the law enforcement came in and the charge nurse was the one that basically gave them the down low on what happened. Then there's stage 2. Dr. Vaskez asking law enforcement to join the conversation. So at that point, she wanted to have law enforcement to be present in the room while she talked to Alexee Trevizo and the mother and giving them an update of what's going on. Then there's stage 3. Doctor telling Trevizo, we discovered a dead baby in the bathroom. Stage 4, Trevizo's statements of her saying, it came out of me. I didn't know what to do. I was so scared. It was not crying or nothing. Then we have stage 5, placenta, bleeding, transferring to the Loveless Hospital. These were statements made by the doctor with Alexee Trevizo and the mother and law enforcement in the room. Next stage is detained, not free to leave. This is when law enforcement finally speaks up in the room and tells Alexee Trevizo, hey, you're being detained. You're not free to leave. We're going to be here guarding you, and then we're going to be outside of your door. And then lastly, more statements made to the mom from Alexee Trevizo. This is not really the point of contention here, but I just wanted to remind you guys that she did make more statements following this.
So I started working her up. We did a pregnancy test on her, showed positive. She was denying that she had sex. Then she said she had to go to the bathroom. She went to the bathroom. She was in there for quite a while. We kept knocking on the door. Finally, we got her to open the door, and there was blood and shit everywhere. She was cleaning it up. Okay. So we took her back to the room, and I was afraid that she knew she was pregnant. She had done something to herself. Mm-hmm. So the doctor started doing a vaginal exam on her. We had the lady come to clean the bathroom. She put the baby in the trash can, and then she put another clean liner over the top of it. So when they looked in there, there was no trash in there, but it was underneath the clean bag.
To me, it seems like the nurse was giving law enforcement the details, the context of what happened, what they found, and who the person was. However, one of the Supreme Court justices did say this.
There's been a report. They've heard from the nurse, probably things maybe the nurse shouldn't have told them. And then they're invited to go in.
So maybe the part where the nurse shouldn't have said some certain things is this part right here, where he talks about her potentially lying.
The baby's dead. Okay, we have him in trauma too, but she killed the kid.
Yeah, how old was the baby?
I don't know, it's full term. She just had it, in the bathroom was what happened. And then whatever she did, I don't know, she's gonna lie. She wouldn't tell us she's pregnant, she's been lying the whole time.
Okay.
So that's what's going on. I just pulled the doctor out of the room, so nothing's been said to the patient or the mother that's in there yet.
And then the doctor does come out to give more context about Alexee Trevizo.
So, Officer, the first thing though is I need to make sure that the mother, the woman who delivered the baby, is medically stable. I don't know if she delivered a placenta. She's bleeding a lot. I just got her accepted to Loveless, so I need to get her up there as soon as possible.
Okay, this is what we're ready.
Okay, so how I need to tell her what's going on, and I need to tell the mother what's going. The mother, they're both in there together. Is one of you willing to be present for that conversation? Are you guys going?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go in right now and do this.
So we're doing that.
And then I'll make sure Leela comes down, all the other nurses.
That segues to stage 2, where the doctor asks law enforcement to be a part of the conversation. And by inviting the police into the treatment room, is that essentially violating physician-patient privilege? Here's what one of the justices thought about the doctor's words.
My concern here is, and I'm curious, why did the police feel like they needed to go in the room?
By the way, this is the attorney making the argument for the state. They are the ones that are appealing the district court's decision and taking it up to the Supreme Court.
With the doctor while she's talked about the defendant's treatment, because the doctor told the police before she went in the room, I need to go tell her about what her condition is and what we need to do next. And then she says, will you come with me? Which I find a little strange. But
And here is the defense's position on that.
I think where we're a little bit stuck is we're imagining that the police could have come in and maybe the doctor could have said something different that wouldn't have triggered the physician-patient privilege. And I would say, no, the police should absolutely not have been in the patient care room.
It seems like the state's position is that Alexee Trevizo waived her patient-physician privilege because of 2 reasons. One is because there is third party present, which we'll get to later in the video when we're talking about Alexee Trevizo's statements. And then the second one is because of mandatory reporting. This is where hospital staff, they are required to report to law enforcement if there is 1, a case of child abuse or neglect, or 2, if there is a suspicious death. The defense is going to get into the state's position that mandatory reporting happened because there is a suspected child abuse or neglect. And she's going to say that it doesn't apply in Alexee Trevizo's case.
If they have reasonable suspicion that a child is an abused or neglected child. And then it goes on to a whole slew of legislative rules that have to happen, including you have to report it either to police or to CYFD. If it goes to police, police need to report it to CYFD. CYFD then gets involved.
By the way, CYFD stands for Child Youth Family Department. I think it's kind of like New Mexico's version of CPS.
That's not what's happening here. There's nothing in discovery. There's nothing in the record that police ever got CYFD involved because this isn't the operable statute. The operable statute is instead 2411.5, which is reporting a suspicious death. There is no dispute here that doctors did not try to resuscitate this neonate, that they found the neonate cold, blue, very clearly deceased.
Not only is the defense saying that the abused or neglected child is not something that is applicable here, but if you look at the suspicious death, she's saying that's also not applicable because suspicious death is only triggered when there is a medical examiner to declare the baby was dead, and then additionally that it was a homicide.
But the issue of what people knew at the time, as far as a report, there was no OMI report at that time.
It does triggering the suspicious death statute.
Correct. All they saw was a suspicious death. And so that requires one of 2 things, either a report to local law enforcement or OMI. And then it's up to those people to take on the investigation.
Is a suspicious death only confirmed if there's a medical examiner to confirm it? Because, for example, the state gives this example.
But as I pointed in the brief, just from this court's common law interpretation, and it would be odd to say, well, you have a duty to report an abused or neglected child, but not a dead baby. But the defense's own Exhibit D at the suppression here talks about how Leela, the custodian lady, what caused them to call the police was that she had found a baby wrapped in a trash bag under another trash bag. Now, as sad as that is, clearly that's a suspicious death. No different than if a 30-year-old had been found in the cleaning supply room with gunshots to the head.
Right. So do you really need to have a medical examiner to come in and confirm, hey, that death right there looks kind of suspicious? I don't know. Maybe that's how the things were done in New Mexico. To me, the defense position is quite clear. They believe that the doctor and the head nurse crossed the line when they divulged more information about Alexee Trevizo than needed.
I would still argue, Your Honor, that any reporting is not prospective reporting. It's not an ongoing duty of some sort of ongoing duty of disclosure. That would de facto turn a doctor and any other mandatory reporter into an investigator by police.
The only thing the doctor was required to report was, we found a dead baby.
I would say that the doctor was required to report the basis of her reasonable suspicion for child abuse. The report was made. Now it's up to them to take on their investigatory tools. It doesn't mean they have an ongoing open entry into her medical records.
And I can understand the very human aspect of it, of finding a dead baby in your workplace could be very shocking. So when law enforcement comes in, I can understand that they were just trying to give as much information as they can to give them context of the situation and what was going on, rather than just saying, we found a dead baby and that's it. That's all that they're saying. Now, I don't have any hospital training, okay? I volunteer, try to volunteer for a hospital, but then I end up not going. But I don't know what kind of training they go through when there's a crime that happens at the hospital. Now, maybe there was special training. Maybe they should have known better. Or I also wonder, could they also have contacted legal as well? Because I'm pretty sure every hospital would have like a legal team, or maybe like a legal person, maybe on site, maybe not. I don't know. But essentially someone to instruct them on what to do when this happens. So one, you don't break patient-physician confidentiality, and then you're not opening yourself to being sued, potentially. And like I said, it's easy to look at this in retrospect and pinpoint out little tiny things that someone could have done wrong. But when you're in that situation, I mean, things are just very different. But you also have to offset that with what kind of training that they have and what they have been, better prepared to deal with situations like this. And, I do have friends in the medical field, but I almost don't want to drag them into my true crime stuff because it's very depressing. The topics are really dark sometimes and also very, very sad. But for those of you guys that are out there, I'm very curious. How would you guys have acted in this situation? Would you guys have had the proper training, given that you were trained by the hospital? Would you have known how to deal with this in a different way where you're also being very careful about not breaking patient-physician confidentiality and not violating HIPAA? Honestly, my thoughts are that the doctor was just completely freaked out by the situation, and she wanted to make sure she was doing everything right by involving police right away.
I don't know if she delivered a placenta. She's bleeding a lot. I just got her accepted to Loveless.
Okay.
so I need to get her up there as soon as possible.
Okay, take us over right.
Okay, so how I need to tell her what's going on, and I need to tell the mother what's going on. The mother, they're both in there together. Is one of you willing to be present for that conversation? Are you guys going?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go in right now.
But we're doing that.
And then I'll make sure legal comes down, all the other nurses and stuff.
I honestly do believe that she thought she was doing the right thing given the situation. However, because of that action, that is resulting in her being accused of being an agent for law enforcement and not putting Alexee Trevizo's well-being first.
This girl goes into the emergency room. She's got these backaches. She's asked, are you pregnant? She says no. They then do a pregnancy test. It comes out positive. They don't tell her that the test shows she's pregnant. After the baby is delivered in the bath, she comes in and says, we found a dead baby in the bath. Worse than that. It gives weight to the assertion that they thought from the beginning, the doctor thought from the beginning, she lied when she said she wasn't pregnant. And now she's confronting her without the benefit of having given her any medical information that she, in fact, delivered a dead baby. So that seems to me pretty agency-oriented in terms of assisting the police.
Well, again, Santiago says that it has to be solely to help the police. Santiago says that there's any kind of mixed motive, like you have a professional
An
interest.
inference can be made, it is solely to help the police.
I don't believe that inference can be made under Santiago, but I will say this, Justice, and I think this points to a good point. Even if you give the defendant the benefit of the doubt that she did not know she was pregnant, immediately upon giving birth, the natural thing you would think anybody would do is, help, I just had a baby, help, I need help. She did not tell anybody for 30 minutes. It was 30 minutes later that the cleaning lady found the baby, and obviously another 5-10 minutes till the police showed up. I think one can make a good argument that she did not even from the beginning avail herself of the physician-patient privilege.
I want to get over to stage 3, where the doctor tells Alexee Trevizo that we found a dead baby in the bathroom. Just to be clear, these stages that I'm discussing, the boundaries are not clear and cut. They're more nebulous and some of them blends into another. So just keep that in mind when I'm discussing these stages. The argument for the stages are kind of like dynamic, so they do flow into one another.
I'm sorry, sir. We discovered a dead baby in the bathroom.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. It came out of me and I didn't know what to do.
Alexee, I told you about this.
I just asked you, baby, to tell me the truth.
This is where the Supreme Court justices are trying to wrestle with whether or not Alexee Trevizo was in custody at this point. Was she free to leave? Because if this is a custodial interrogation, then yes, she should have been Mirandized, full stop. Now, the state's position is that, well, law enforcement, yes, they were present, but they didn't ask any questions. Therefore, it's not an interrogation.
The reason why the state believes there's no interrogation here, Your Honor, is when you look at the video, just so we're all starting from a baseline, the police do not ask her any questions at all. The police do at one point ask the mother, does she have a driver's license? They hand that over. Of course, they're going to run everyone for warrants, like showing up at a car accident scene.
Rewinding it back just a little bit, the Supreme Court justice is going to give a definition of interrogation under Miranda.
Characterizations in the rule.
Counsel, I'm going to interrupt you in two things. First, you need to slow way down. Second, I'd like you to address pretty much right out of the gate State versus ybarra.
And I'm not immediately familiar with that
Okay.
case, Your Honor. I'm sorry. I'm trying to do my best to answer your question.
Okay, so I'll try and tee it up a little bit for you because I don't want to completely catch you off guard. So this is a 1990 Supreme Court case. And in that case, it's discussing the term interrogation for purposes of Miranda, which seems to be an issue here. And it says that under Miranda refers not only to express questioning, but also to any words or actions on the part of the police, other than those normally attendant to arrest in custody, that the police should know are reasonably likely to elicit incriminating response from the suspect.
These cases can be very interesting. So in the case of Ybarra, what happens is he gets in a fight with his girlfriend's brother, Garcia. He gets his ass beat. He's really pissed. He goes in the police station to write to file a formal complaint. However, because the police says that there's no judge present at the time or something like that, that they can't do anything about it. Ybarra is really pissed and he's like, well, if there's nothing done, you're going to find Garcia into pieces. Now, law enforcement, they decide to escort Ybarra back home. But apparently they're like 2 to 3 minutes behind him. And when he gets there, who's there? Garcia's there, and they get into a fight again. Now, Garcia ends up kicking Ybarra in the leg, which prompts Ybarra to stab him. So now both of them need to go to the hospital. Garcia ends up dying because of his injuries, and the police put Ybarra under arrest. However, they don't Mirandize him. He goes in to get treatment, and while he's getting treatment by the nurse, law enforcement is present in the room. The nurse, while asking questions, for the treatment, she's like, oh, are you the one that stabbed him? He's like, yes. What kind of knife did you use? He describes it. And then also, why did you stab him? Oh, because he deserved it. He beat my ass earlier. And so law enforcement, they're listening and they're perking up and they say, where was the knife? And Ybarra doesn't respond. So this is a case where the Supreme Court determined that the statements made by Ybarra are not going to be able to be used in court against him because 1, he should have been Mirandized, 2, he was arrested and he was in custody, and that even though law enforcement didn't ask Ybarra any questions, it was the nurse that was asking questions, law enforcement should have known better than to sit still and continue listening because obviously the questions that the nurse was asking Ybarra, it was going to elicit some sort of incriminating statements. So although the police did not ask Alexee Trevizo any questions directly, could there have been actions that shown that Alexee Trevizo was indeed in part of a custodial interrogation? And maybe in the situation, should they have known better that maybe Alexee Trevizo would say something incriminatory during that time? Wait, is incriminatory even a word? Incriminating.
It's about what was known to the police when they said, yes, sure, we will go into the room and have the conversation with you, because that's their yes to the statement. So it's not about what she knows. It's about what the police know and what their motivation was to go in the room and have a conversation with Ms. Trevizo.
And I understand that, but certainly if the police had gone there gun home with their guns drawn or something, saying you're not going anywhere, and immediately have made it clear you're in custody.
But they don't have to say any of those things for it to be custody.
And I understand that, but certainly what the defendant is perceiving or hearing is what is the defendant perceiving and reasonably hearing and seeing.
Now, that's where I see a disconnect between the justice and the state here, because the justice wants to focus on what's the police state of mind. What was their purpose of going into the room with the doctor? The state, however, is focusing more on Alexee Trevizo's state of mind, whether or not to her she thought that she was in custody. Now, let's segue to what the defense thinks of a 19-year-old being in that situation. Would you also have thought that you're in custody as well?
With counsel got really focused on custody only being a restriction of freedom to the degree normally associated with formal arrests. But in New Mexico, it's disjunctive. We have two ways that somebody can be in custody. There's that way, which normally comes with handcuffs and everything else. And then there's the second, which is that a reasonable person in the same situation, and in this moment, let's put ourselves in the mind of a reasonable 19-year-old high schooler, would not feel free to leave. And that's where ybarra, I think, is so important, Your Honor, because it talks about the inherently coercive environment of the of the emergency department and cautioned police against exploiting it.
Miranda doesn't require confirmation by the police that you're being detained. I mean,
Absolutely. The main difference between those cases on which the state relies and this one is the placement of police, where they're either just in the emergency department, they happen to overhear, or they're standing back, and there's this independent conversation. What we have not seen in any of those cases that makes this one markedly different is that these officers were physically blocking the door. Custody is because she has 4 authority figures acting in concert, only one of whom she's ever seen before. That's the doctor, the charge nurse. And as if you've all seen the video, he's a large man who aligned himself very strongly with police. These 3 men walk into the room and they're physically blocking the door. The operative question for the court is, would a reasonable 19-year-old high school girl in that situation feel free to leave? And the answer is no.
Now, going back to the question of why did law enforcement go in? Was it for medical reasons or was it for legal reasons?
Is there any medical reason for inviting the officers into the room?
I would say I don't know that there was a medical reason for them to be in the room, but
Is there any legal, any police reason? Is she a threat? Is she getting up and running away? Is she doing any of those things? Is there a suspicion she has a weapon? Or is there any police reason for them being in the room?
the best answer I have is I don't believe there was a medical reason for the police to be in there. Do they have a legal reason to be in there? Yes. Now, might it have been
What's
a
the
different?
legal reason?
Well, they're investigating this, and they probably want to at some point.
Watching her get a pelvic exam, is that investigation?
Well, later on in the video, when there is a point in the video when the nurse says, will you two please step out? And the police do. They step out of the hallway because there's probably medical.
In the defense, they're going to take the state's statement that, well, if they're there for legal reasons to investigate, then that means Alexee Trevizo is in custody.
When the state agrees that there was no medical reason for having the police officers in the room, does that bear on Miranda?
Absolutely.
Tell me how.
Absolutely. By admitting that there is no medical purpose for the police to be in the room, that's effectively an admission that they're there to investigate a potential crime.
but is investigation the same as interrogation and detention?
That question doesn't go to custody. I am interested in that. I mean, does the answer senior justice's question mean they're in custody? Because then you get to interrogation.
There is a difference between investigation and custody, but in this case, there wasn't. In this case, there wasn't. And the reason is because of that pre-confrontation conversation that occurred in the hallway that the justices were discussing earlier. And that's that conversation where police are told by the charge nurse that she entered the bathroom and again, the charge nurse never treated Alexee. Earlier, we heard counsel say, this isn't a whodunit. This isn't who had the baby in the bathroom. So there's nothing that was stated there that would have taken police from a place. And that's where that pre-confrontation comes in with the nurse, where he says, she went in there to harm her pregnancy. She's lied the whole time she's here. She's gonna lie to you, and she killed the kid. So they're operating under, we're in a homicide investigation now. She's our only suspect.
And so I'm trying to piece her arguments together here, but I think what she's trying to say is that the scenario would have been different if law enforcement came to the hospital. They didn't know whose dead baby it was, and they were investigating. And they happened to just stumble upon Alexee Trevizo, and that's when she made those incriminatory statements. Those wouldn't be suppressed because, one, she wasn't in custody, and they were just simply there to kind of investigate and ask questions. She was the one that decided to answer and put herself in jeopardy. However, in this scenario, the defense attorney is arguing that it's different because law enforcement, they had that conversation with the charge nurse before going to Alexee Trevizo's room. So they know that there's a dead baby and they know that she's the one that's tied to it. And because of that knowledge, that's why she's arguing that Alexee Trevizo was already in a custodial interrogation and she should have been Mirandized. If she wasn't Mirandized, then those statements don't come in. That's her argument, I think. Like it said, it's all kind of muddy here, but let's hop on over to the Alexee Trevizo statements.
We discovered a dead baby in the bathroom.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. It came out of me and I didn't know what to do. Lexi, I told you about this. But I just asked you, baby, to tell me the truth. It was not crying or nothing. What did you do to it?
Okay, stop right here.
Stop.
Remember earlier in the video where it talked about the state is going to assert that Alexee Trevizo, she waived her patient-physician privilege because of mandatory reporting, and then 2, because of third-party presence. Now, that's the part we're going to focus on third-party presence right now. The state had already made this argument in front of the district court judge, and she didn't buy it. That's why she decided to have these, statements suppressed. Now, this is where the state says that, well, the third-party people are Alexee Trevizo's mom and law enforcement. If you're making these statements that's supposed to be confidential, well, obviously it's not confidential because there's other people there listening with an earshot. Quite honestly, though, I wasn't really buying the mom part because typically, you know, if you go into maybe the emergency room, you might want to be accompanied by another person. And just because that person there is there, I'm pretty sure that most people aren't going to be cool with a HIPAA violation.
I would say D4, 11504 D4 certainly covers this, but the other big issue is the waiver. The fact that she spoke to the doctor with the police present and her mom present.
Okay, so mom's there to take care of her.
Well, she was 19 years old though.
Okay.
Okay, so his time was running out, so I think he just like spit out a bunch of numbers really quickly. I think this is what he's referring to. He says Rule 11504D, physician, patient, and psychotherapist patient privilege. D, exceptions. No privilege shall apply for confidential communications concerning any material that a physician or patient is required by law to report to a public employee or public agency, which I guess in this part would be law enforcement. So I think that goes to the physician having a mandatory reporting to report to law enforcement about finding a dead baby tied to Alexee Trevizo. And the state arguing that this is the reason why there's an exception to the patient-physician privilege. I always like listening to defense arguments because they can get really crafty sometimes. And I honestly think this defense attorney really got pretty interesting here. And when she describes why the mom and the officer being there is no big issue.
She was questioning her daughter more than the police were. And it wasn't about her treatment. It was about, you did this and you're going to be in trouble and all of those comments. And in fact, if I remember correctly, I think the police even at one point said, please stop.
Where did you put the baby at? Tell me the truth. In there.
517-836-460.
That came out in the toilet bag? You put it in the bag?
Yes.
In what bag? Why did you say anything to us? Do you want to get in trouble for this now? You could get in trouble for this, baby.
Mom, all right, just give it time, okay? We're gonna speak to detectives whenever she's ready, okay? You ready for the second one? Second one is 5.
How was the mom there in furtherance of her care?
Her own reactive statements to what she's just learned. But in the course of Alexee's care, she brought her there as her emergency contact. She was asked by medical professionals at one point to help her get into her gown. She's been going back and forth to the bathroom to knock and see if she's okay. She's sitting by her daughter's side. She's advocating her. That's absolutely in furtherance of care. Just because we now in retrospect think, oh, some of her statements might have been against Alexee's interests, that does not mean that in the moment she was not there in furtherance of care and that the physician-patient privilege does not attach.
So we have.
Actually, sorry, the interesting part of the defense's argument is when they explain how the officers being there was in furtherance of Alexee Trevizo's care. However, we got to go back just a tiny little bit here to the part where the doctor asked law enforcement to accompany her when she's planning to go in to talk to Alexee and her mom.
The first thing now is I need to make sure that the mother, the woman who delivered the baby, is medically stable. I don't know if she delivered a placenta. She's bleeding a lot. I just got her accepted to Loveless. So I need to get her up there as soon as possible.
Okay, this is what we were ready.
Okay, so how I need to tell her what's going on, and I need to tell the mother what's going on. The mother, they're both in there together. Is one of you willing to be present for that conversation? Are you guys going? Okay, let's go in right now.
Here's what the defense has to say about this portion, and then we'll get into the next part.
The reason is because of what the doctor said. That and the charge nurse verified it and said the exact same thing. No one's talking to Alexee, aka no one's treating her except in the presence of police. So in that situation, they're absolutely in furtherance of care because she's not.
But how is the mom in furtherance of the care?
Oh man, I really wish that the Supreme Justice didn't interrupt her because I wanted her to expand more on that. But you know, they're smart. Maybe they knew exactly where she was going to go with that, but I wanted to hear more.
Sorry, there's police here. We found a dead baby in the bathroom. So this is the first time the doctor has spoken to Alexee, and she made it clear later in an interview, and her actions made it clear at the time, and this is the substantial evidence that the district court relied on, that she wasn't going to get treatment without police present.
All right, let's slow it down piece by piece. Here is the doctor's interview months after this happened.
It did not take me very long to determine that the child was dead. And I made the decision to not attempt resuscitation. Really, the temperature was cool, and I also did not want to contaminate if it was a crime scene. So at that point, then my attention shifted to making sure that the mother was stabilized because I realized she just delivered a baby. I didn't know where the placenta was, she could die from a postpartum hemorrhage. So I contacted the on-call obstetrician at Loveless Regional in Roswell and said, I need to transfer this patient to you emergently. They said, yep, just send her up. I think the fire department just took her up right away. But before we transferred her, I talked to my team. I said, look, we're not going to talk to her until we have police present. I want witnesses present for our discussion with her. At that point, several of your officers arrived. They arrived very quickly. And we went in and I said, we found a dead baby in the trash.
Seemingly, it seems like that's what the district court judge relied on when making her decision about whether or not Dr. Vaskez crossed the line from, what did she say, from medical provider to law enforcement agent. The doctor, by failing to advise Alexee Trevizo of her right of confidentiality, by failing to invoke the privilege on her behalf of her patient, and by entering only when accompanied by law enforcement, acted as an agent of law enforcement. So again, if she's acting as an agent of law enforcement and then she goes in to talk to Alexee Trevizo, any statement that was made by Alexee Trevizo at that point, well, then you should have Mirandized her.
So this information, the doctor didn't know where the placenta was. Indeed, the placenta was never found. The doctor didn't know anything about the circumstances of the birth. So Alexee's statement confirming that birth is absolutely necessary for her ongoing diagnosis and treatment.
And man, her argument, I could see how it makes the doctor and her staff look really bad, as if they're just like waiting around for a long time, not wanting to interact with Alexee Trevizo until law enforcement arrived, like fiddling around their thumbs doing nothing. My argument would be that it's possible that the doctor already felt like she was already making the motions to have Alexee Trevizo treated because one, she called Loveless Hospital to have Alexee Trevizo transferred, and two, because they didn't have the correct ultrasound probe at the hospital at the time, she called to have another ultrasound technician to come in and to see if Alexee Trevizo still had the placenta inside her body. Because, if you've ever been to the ER before, the doctor's not going to be by your bedside 24/7, to make sure that you're okay. They're going to go out and do other things. They're going to order some stuff and then be outside of the room. And, just maybe the doctor assumed that law enforcement would respond pretty quickly because, again, there is a dead baby in the bathroom. If the doctor was waiting around for like hours, not treating Alexee Trevizo because she was waiting for law enforcement, then yeah, that's like a different story. But, because of the fact, I think they responded, they said 5-10 minutes, and the hospital was already being called, the ultrasound technician was already on her way, and maybe at this point there was really no further interaction needed at the time. The state does address this about the police presence.
There's a lot in the answer brief that suggests that the police presence there caused a delay or hindered treatment of some kind, or even delayed possibly her being flown to Roswell. I want to be very clear. There is absolutely zero evidence in the record that would support any fact finder in finding that any medical procedure or care was hindered or delayed, or that they even had anything to do with the helicopter riding. So what I would say is the best answer I have is I don't believe there was a medical.
And maybe the defense wanted the doctor to go in there and tell Alexee Trevizo, oh, by the way, you had a baby. Maybe the doctor didn't want to do that that moment because she already assumed that, of course, Alexee Trevizo knew that she had a baby because she was the one who gave birth in the bathroom. So obviously the doctor is not here at the hearing giving her testimony. So I'm just trying to figure what are some other angles as to why the doctor did what she did. Now we're circling back to the defense's argument of the officer's presence being there was actually in furtherance of Alexee Trevizo's care because she waited for the 5 to 10 minutes in order for police to arrive in order to go back to the room and tell Alexee Trevizo that they found the dead baby and that she was going to be transported to the hospital. So that's why the officer being present does not waive Alexee Trevizo's patient-physician privilege. All right, next part. And this part's a lot shorter. The part where the doctor tells Alexee Trevizo about the placenta, the bleeding, and how she was going to be transferred to another hospital.
Number one priority, guys. Number one priority is she just had a baby. I don't know if she's delivered the placenta. She's bleeding significantly.
Yeah.
I've spoken to the obstetrician at Loveless. They want her out there as soon as possible.
Okay.
I obviously need your permission to transfer her for medicals. She needs to
She's
be
19.
Oh, you're right.
But she is a student too.
She's still 19 years
you're
old.
right. You're right. She needs to. I'm sorry, I forgot she's 19.
Keep having me.
But you need to make sure that you're safe. I need to send you to Loveless to labor and delivery. Will you please agree to that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. I'm gonna work on that.
So if the justices go by with what defense is saying, that the only thing the hospital staff should tell law enforcement is that we found a dead baby and that's it. So I guess technically the statements made by the doctor right now, it could be seen as violating patient-physician privilege. Oh, I do have a clip of one of the justices saying that we found a dead baby, that statement right there is not privilege statement.
Is the statement of we found a baby in the trash. That's not a privileged statement because it's not about Ms. Trevizo's healthcare. It's
But I do remember the defense disagreeing with the justice, saying that, well, Alexee Trevizo made those statements because in furtherance of her treatment, she had to let the doctor know that, hey, that baby, it is confirmed that it was mine. I don't know. It seems a little bit loose to me, but I see where she was kind of going with that. And now we're at the stage where the doctor is going to leave the room. The police is going to talk to Alexee Trevizo directly and tell her that, hey, you're being detained. You're not free to go anywhere. We're going to be standing here, waiting here. And then also there's going to be people waiting outside to make sure you're not going anywhere.
Do you guys have, I'm the charge nurse here, do you guys have any questions for me?
Like, how big is the baby?
It's full term.
What? 9 months? Nothing was crying. Lexi, have you watched the news of the girls that what they do to their babies and what they go to jail? Nothing was crying.
Any other questions? Okay.
So as of right now, like what I said is we're gonna have the detectives come over here and they're gonna talk to you, okay? We have to gather some more information about what's going on. They'll get your statement. They're gonna get the doctor's statements. They're gonna get everybody's statements, okay? So I don't know everything yet, okay? So I'm not gonna tell you, I can't tell you nothing honestly, okay? All I can say is,
Gonna go to jail?
right now, right now she's being detained. So she's not gonna leave from here at all, period, okay? So one of us will
Is
be
it in your custody? Like,
yeah, she's detained. Yeah, she's not under arrest, but she is detained, okay? She's not free to leave. So while this whole thing is coming up, is you're not free to leave, okay? One of us will be in here the whole time with you, because you're not gonna try to leave or nothing like that.
she
All right?
won't.
Like I said, the detectives will be here. They're gonna talk to you. I mean, your care is of the utmost right now, okay? They're gonna do what they need to do to take care of you, to make sure you get stable. They get you transferred out or whatever. Like I said, the detectives are already been notified. They're already on the way, so they're gonna come talk to you, all right? So don't leave, don't try to do nothing. One of us is always gonna be in here, in this room with you, okay? Unless we have to step out for doctor's orders, something like that, because if they need to examine you or do something with you. But other than that, like I said, you are detained. You are not free to leave at this point. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Where was the baby at?
I don't know. I have no clue yet. Like I said, I just talked to the charge nurse. We're still getting all the information right now.
Okay.
Okay. Once we get that information, like I said, the detectives, they can clue you in on everything and talk to you more about it.
Okay.
All right? So. Do you happen to have an ID on you, perchance?
Yes, she does.
Okay. Can we get that, please?
So the state was like, okay, well, I don't think that she was really in custody because technically law enforcement was waiting outside. However, he does get pushback from some of the justices saying, well, isn't she being guarded? Is she really free to go? But the state says this, okay, well, let's say that, she was in custody at that time. It was after she made those incriminating statements. But it seemed like the state barely wanted to even concede at this part. Now, wrapping up, one of the justices did have a very interesting question for the defense, although it didn't really have anything to do with what's going on right now.
Can I ask a really different question that's just been weighing on me? So assume the court agrees with you on either Miranda or privilege. Case goes to trial. You've indicated today that the basis of the defense will be stillbirth. Aren't her statements supportive of her own defense that you're working so hard to exclude here? And so I see, like, you all will be gone. There will be a new attorney involved, probably a public defender, and we will have excluded statements that are consistent with what her defense is. And that just troubles me in a weird way. That's why I said it's just a related but far field question.
Yeah, I think that I appreciate the question, Your Honor, and I'm not going anywhere. I'll be there for trial to the extent it happens. But that's just not the operative question for the court to think about trial strategy and so on. I would point the court to State versus Gutierrez, in which this court has decided that they take a different approach than the feds do, for example, on constitutional rights.
Most things.
On most things. And that approach is, we vindicate her rights because they need to be vindicated, not for deterrence, not for anything else. Her rights were violated. What we need to do here today is try to right that wrong. And then when we get to trial.
She decides to voluntarily use the information.
Correct.
No harm, no foul.
Correct. Exactly, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I realize that I am.
And that was such a good question. Not only that, but I think the answer was pretty great as well because, well, the justice is asking, you guys are fighting so hard to suppress those statements, but when you go to trial, isn't your defense that the baby was a stillborn? And Alexee Trevizo's statements, well, it seems like they support that. Now, the answer to that is she's basically saying, yeah, but what we're really trying to get at is that Alexee Trevizo's rights were violated, and we need to do something in order to right that wrong, essentially. So during trial, if Alexee Trevizo wants to have those portions included, then they can have it included if they want to. But here's the thing. I think those body cam footages make her look really, really bad, even though those statements could support her defense. Because when you're watching the body cam footage, it's so much different for the jury to hear it versus to actually see how someone in their eyes react to being confronted by this. And I think what could crucially hurt Alexee here is that, well, it doesn't look like she's crying here. Yeah, she might be in distress. Maybe she's traumatized, but there's like no tears. She's not crying. Doesn't seem like she's upset that, she just gave birth to this baby and the baby was dead. So I think in the long run, it might be better for the jury to not see the body cam if you were on the defensive side. And then this also sort of punishes law enforcement and the hospital staff for how everything went down. All right, well, that is it for Alexee Trevizo for today. It's been about 2.5 years. We're almost at 3 years now since it's happened, and we'll have to wait and see what the Supreme Court decides on this. Whether or not the body cam footage and Alexee Trevizo's statements, if they're going to be allowed to be in trial. And then we'll see when the trial happens, man. I think this has been in kind of like, not in la la land, but it's kind of just been in lull for about a year now. So we'll see what the decision is. I'll keep my eyes on it. And guys, I know this was a lot to cover, but hopefully I was able to break it down to you guys in a way, that's easy to understand. For me, I quite honestly had to watch it a couple of times because the state, for example, I think he was kind of all over the place. But I think maybe he was just being really nervous. And then the fact that you only have 20 minutes to make your arguments and then you have 10 minutes afterwards, it's just so much to argue and it feels like you're rushing through and it's hard to be able to present something, but then you get interrupted by the judges. So I think this was a tough one here. I would say the defense was way easier to follow. I look forward to seeing more from this defense attorney because she says that she's going to stick with the case. The other attorney they had was Gary Mitchell, and he was kind of hard to listen to at times. So I do appreciate her more clear and concise way of answering these questions. But all right, guys, that is it. Guys, we do cover other cases as well. Feel free to subscribe. We'd love to have you guys come back, stop by the live stream, say hello, and we'll see what other cases we're going to be covering. There's going to be Corey Richens. Maybe Walsh's trial is next month in October. And then we also have the OnlyFans, Courtney Clenny. I think her trial is happening in December. Corey Richens is next year. So that's some stuff to cover. All right, y'all. Have a good one. Take care. Thank you so much for watching. And go outside, get some fresh air. And yeah, I'll see you guys next one. Bye.